Several years ago, I started to see what was happening in downturns in the economy.
But why hasn't the hospitality industry changed and evolved? What's holding them back from your perspective?
I think personally we should be moving toward a model where the equipment really is the canvas while the attention is completely focused on the outcome rather than charging a customer one line item at a time for all these pieces and parts.
I believe that installing and having your equipment and your technology built in, integrated into the facility is the way to go.
Every industry has a moment when it has to confront its own outdated systems. Welcome to Full Resolution. For years, Hospitality AV has operated on a model built around rentals, line items, and complexity. We helped build that system, and now we're here to challenge it. There's a clearer, smarter approach rooted in ownership, operational efficiency, and real revenue growth. Join us, and let's get this movement started.
So I think of this as starting earlier in the conversation. So move away from the line by line rental item, if I'm hearing you correct. And then also starting the conversation, instead of perhaps having a director of audiovisual taking orders and adding line items to a quote, really have an experience manager that changing roles so that the conversation can evolve differently at the beginning in a more holistic way.
And speaking of the beginning, instead of them imagining, and I always use cars as analogies, instead of them imagining what the car is going to look like, which we don't do today, we go on the lot, we look at something, and we say, well, I don't really like the color, but I like the other 99 things about this car. Okay, I'll take it. The same thing applies if it's already built in. When someone comes to tour the property, they don't have to use their imagination. You can walk them into the room and immerse them in everything that's available. That in itself is going to be a game changer because it helps you sell the event right out of the gate much better.
If the technical producer, as I like to, maybe the evolution of this individual is more that, versus the person that's actually trying to sell you line items and hauling in and out equipment and installing it. Imagine how their lives change if their focus was on the content that you're actually sharing with the individuals. Then it can it can be produced and delivered and captured, and I think that's a key word here, captured in such a way that can be meaningful for the consumer, meaningful for the client. So many times, how many meetings have I been to where, you go, it's rah, 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 you're there for 3 days, and, the hope and the intent is that you're leaving with great information that's inspiring, that's going to, change your company and make it even a better company than it was. Because let's face it, there's an investment that goes into a meeting. A lot, a lot of times, and most times, that is just simply not the case. Um, I can count on one hand the time that I've attended meetings, and usually there's two or three every year of my career, where you can say that there was meaningful content that was delivered to me after the meeting, where I am now applying what it is that I learned at that meeting. So, and again, it takes us to a key point here, which I think is the capturing of the content. And again, we're not just talking about installing, monitors into rooms, but it's lighting, it's the presentation itself, how it comes across, how it looks in a very professional, intuitive way, and actually cameras that are capturing. Think about where the camera has evolved to. Cameras used to be, tremendous, and you needed operators, behind them. You don't need that today. Um, and you can easily install cameras in a facility where you're capturing the content. And again, not compromising the look and the design and the feel of the room. That certainly is not what we would want to do, where we're in essence creating, what may appear to be a studio. Um, you can do this in an elegant way, in a way in which it's again intuitive to your space, but also capturing the content in a way.
It's interesting, Michael, that you bring that up because as human beings, I think about it as going to the movies, right? Have you ever watched a movie a second time and you see things you didn't see the first time around? So capturing things on video as you're describing to have it be consumed later on. But because let's face it, when you're sitting in a meeting, you're distracted for numerous reasons. You're texting, you might be emailing, maybe the audio isn't what it needs to be in the room. But the reality is having the opportunity to see the movie a second time reinforces the content, and then the message lands with the audience, and isn't that really the whole reason to have the meeting to begin with? It isn't about was the screen great or was the audio great? It is, did the message land with the audience?
Yeah, and again, I think that every space is different, and how that space is consumed is also different. I think you have to think about your general audience, and that depends upon your business mix, where you're at, and how that's ultimately delivered. But I know in my market, if I had something like that, I would be very different than my competitors. I would have a competitive advantage to my competitors. I would have a space that instantly, I think, either a bride and a groom or potentially a corporate meeting planner would look at and say, okay, instantly I can see that I'm probably going to save money in this environment because just the sheer labor of all the things that hauling things in and out, or maybe you have a producer that you typically work with, which a lot of meeting planners today they figured out, hey, this is cheaper for me to get my own person than to use the hotel's audiovisual company. And let's face it, we want the room nights. We want the business as much as we can insist that you need to use our AV company that we've contracted with. Ultimately, at the end of the day, at the right times of the year, we're going to allow that client, that customer, to do that, and we lose. Everyone loses in that scenario, including the customer, because they're still paying good money, for that production company to come in and out. They're just probably saving, the percentage that I would be making in that. So we are the ones that are really losing the ownership in that case.
And they're taking on the stress of having to do that, manage that.
And here's the other thing that maybe we're not thinking about in this conversation. I remember when there used to be site inspections and hotel management would always come to the AV company and say, "Hey, we're going to be touring the ballroom. Can you throw up a screen and the customer's logo?" Well, that's kind of uninspiring, right? I mean, imagine if in the meeting space, even in the ballroom, there are more permanently installed showcasing items that impresses the customer about the ability to utilize built-in features to make their presentation better, and you can actually showcase them at the time of site inspection. That would go a long way to booking more business, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, without a doubt. There are very, very few times that I am the only hotel that a customer is looking at. Very few. Either they're touring us online, or we're doing a virtual site, which, to be honest with you, doesn't happen as much as you might think. Um, but most times, they're touring my hotel and another property. Imagine what it's like to have what confidently is a competitive advantage, because what we just described, now think of how my sales manager is now walking into that meeting, and the competitive advantage that they know and what they know that the competitor does not have. I think it would be, certainly impactful. I know it would be. I don't even have to think. It without a doubt would be very impactful for us and our business ultimately.
I agree, the virtual tours won't work because I don't trust any of the pictures I see on these websites because 'cause they're all done up like glamour shots. It's never what you see on the website.
It's very true. I think to expand upon it a bit as well, and I think maybe the 2.0 version, I think there are properties that could take advantage of this as well. And I think I am one of those properties. Here I am in Miami, where there's a lot of production going on. There is a lot of product launches going on. The ability, again, to capture still imagery as well as video content, and creating in one of the spaces a production quality studio is something that I also see as a relevant side of the business. And again, it's not just, this is what people are doing. Content is king today. It's everything. And your ability to produce content in a place like a hotel can also give you another side of the business as well as a competitive advantage, again, against your competitors. So whether it's green screen technology, whether it's, again, the ability to record voice, capture images, put a CEO in front, or in front of a backdrop, and have them actually speak to their shareholders, as a part of what a meeting, what that annual meeting was all about. All these things, can be produced in a very costly and a very, or not costly, but cost effective and efficient way, and can be produced really intuitively.
So you have mentioned now that it would be of extreme benefit to have the audiovisual permanently installed from a sales perspective to sell more group business and to have the competitive advantage. You've mentioned that we strip out all of the setup and tear down that happens on a daily basis with equipment coming from the storeroom and cables that need to be turned down. Obviously, that leaves a lot more profit for the hotel and increases the NOI on the P&L for the hotel, and that's pretty important in this day and age as well, right?
Without question, it's everything. Owners are constantly needing, for us as operators to look at our assets and figure out ways to make them more relevant as it relates to our profitability. And anything that can turn that corner and create more value, I think we've evidenced that we would be more attractive. But again, from your standpoint, I know that our ownership, as any ownership, would want to know more about the business side of this. How, it almost sounds, Martin, too good to be true. So how would you be able to actually, from a business standpoint, be able to do this? Where does the economics actually come into play?
Well, I think the economics happen in those areas that I just mentioned. So we're stripping out all of the technical labor. We're giving competitive advantage where you against your competitor have something that they don't have. And then I think at the same time, we have a model where we're not charging by line item on equipment. Perhaps we're charging by attendee, right? Because I think that scales effectively. If you've got a 50-person meeting versus a 500-person meeting, you just scale it by the attendee, and now you're able to offer a larger package of audiovisual just purely by that, and shifting those economics and not having all of that labor included and having a better methodology to sell the space ultimately ought to be leaving money on the table that the hotel should have. And obviously, in our modeling, we're talking now about Apex Global. We're leaving the hotel with 100% of the revenue on their side, with us charging a management fee to operate with our 45 years of experience. a permanently installed solution that operates more efficiently than the way it does today, and even gives the hotels a better access to their meeting space. You know as well as I do that sometime there needs to be a 1 day or 2 day or 3 day setup in the ballroom. Well, that takes that space away when it could be having another function taking place in there. In a permanently installed situation, that now frees up that room for additional social functions or business meetings automatically.
Yeah, that's the other point that we really did not highlight is the turnaround time, the setup and the breakdown of any of these rooms can be problematic. I know that there are many times that we've all turned away business, um, and it's a shame because you see on the front end or the back end that you need at least an additional day on both sides, depending upon the production and how extensive it was. And it just does not need to necessarily be the case anymore in this model.
Well, Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Thanks for taking a little bit of time out of your busy schedule, and great have some great success with Formula One coming to your town.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate being here. It was a lot of fun.
All right. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone in hospitality.
Because this shift is happening now.
Follow, subscribe, and stay part of the conversation.
And if you want to learn more about what we're building, join us at amsishospitality.com.
Thanks for listening to Full Resolution. See you next time.